Welcome back everybody, it's Watercolour Wednesday with me, Rebecca Jarman. It's episode 6 and in this week's class I'm going to be showing you how I transfer my reference image onto a sheet of watercolour paper, just like this one, ready for painting. So let's get straight into the class. The materials that I'm going to be using for this class is a sheet of my watercolour paper, a reference image that you want to transfer, a normal HB pencil, and also some form of graphite stick. So this particular one I use is a 9B. A soft pencil is a good alternative, like a 7, 8 or 9B. You can use those just as well. This is really handy because it's such a large stick, so it covers my area very quickly. So the first step is to take your reference image and turn it over, and I'm going to actually use the back of my pad to rest it on. And then take your graphite stick and you're going to basically cover the area with a really good coverage of the graphite, and this is then going to be used to trace through. So in the next step you'll see why we do this. So this is a great alternative to spending a lot of money on things like trace down paper, which can be really expensive. I'm just having a look at where the image is. So I've got the leaves are up here, top of the head of the... I can just see, if I look through from behind, I can just see where my image is. So I don't have to actually cover the entire space, so I can just cover the area I need to. If I was just tracing something in the centre there, then I'd only need to colour that section. So you can see I'm not leaving any gaps in between my strokes. If I did something like this, then when I trace through I'm going to end up with gaps in my lines, so it's not going to be very good. Obviously when you're tracing an image for your painting, you may want a lot of detail in your drawing first of all, so if you were to leave great big gaps, then the drawing's not going to make much sense. So just spend a little time covering the area you need to with the graphite, and that should do it. I'm going to hold it up to the light and check I've got everything I need. I can see that actually down the bottom I need to cover this area because there's leaves and things. I want to make sure I've got those in. So I'm just going to quickly add that, and that's the first step complete. So the next thing I'm going to do is take my sheet of watercolour paper, which is here, and I'm going to make sure you're on camera there. There we go. So I'm going to take my reference image and place it down where I want it to be. Actually, because it's an A4 sheet, it's going to be the same size as my paper, so I can just lay it directly on. But at this point, if I wanted, for example, my berries to be lower down in the image, I can actually drag the reference image lower down on my paper, and I could tape it down here, and that would make my field mouse sort of central to my painting. But actually I quite like the composition as it is, so I'm going to just simply place it directly on top. And actually I'm going to take a little bit of masking tape, which is really handy, just to tape down top left hand corner there. And what that does is it allows me to lift up the reference image to check what I'm doing part way through my tracing without without it moving too much. So I'm taking a HB pencil with quite a nice point, and I'm going to trace the outline of the leaves in the background first. There's some nice spiky edges to these, which I want to include. And I'm putting a fair bit of pressure down so that the graphite that's on the back of the image is pressed into the paper, the watercolour paper, and it should leave a nice mark. So you can see that clearly here. So if you don't press down hard enough, then the image won't be transferred. So just do a small area to begin with and lift up your paper just to make sure that your lines are tracing through. Okay, so now I'm going to trace through the shape of the mouse. Now it's a little bit out of focus here because I've zoomed right into this image. So I'm just going to pop down a line, an outline of the mouse's head. I know that it's furry, but when I come to do the painting, I can add details of the fur. His little nose here. We've got his mouth coming down. There's a little line down there. So you can take your time tracing. We've got his leg and his foot here. So I'm just tracing in any details that I want to add to my painting. And that way we have an accurate drawing. All the proportions are correct. I won't have to work out anything like that while I'm painting. It can make the painting process a little bit easier. So you can do a basic outline if you wanted to, rather than trace absolutely every detail. If you want to freehand paint some of it, that's nice too. But just for the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to trace it all to show you. And actually I'm going to be using this tracing to do a class this week with my watercolour students. So this is quite handy. So we're going to be painting this field mouse this week with my beginner students. I'm looking forward to that. So when it comes to things like shadows, you can see there's a light area here on the top of this part of the rose hip, and then there's a dark shadow in there. If you wanted to, you could trace the edge of that shadow, and that would give you an extra detail, an extra line to follow when you're painting. But sometimes I think that can be a little too much. When I'm painting, I want the freedom to add the shadows where I want them, where I think they go, freehand if you like, painting them in with my brush rather than following a line. And that way I think you can get a more sort of free flowing painting that's got a little bit more life to it. So just a quick pause to let you know that below this video you will find links to episodes 1 to 5, and you can catch up with any of the ones you've missed. They're all perfect for beginners. They each teach you individual skills, and I really recommend starting in episode 1, working your way through. That way you'll get a really good understanding of the foundations of watercolour painting. Now, if you're enjoying this video and you've learned something, please give me a like and consider subscribing to my channel so that you will get notified every time I upload a new watercolour painting episode. So let's get back to the class. So it's entirely up to you the amount of detail you want to put into your transfers, but this gives you that basic technique to be able to follow at home. So I'm just going around the rose hip now. So I'm pressing on nice and firm and just going to lift up again without moving the undersheet. And you can see I've got a good crisp line there to follow in my painting. I'm going to continue on, I'll speed this up and I'll chat to you at the end. So as you can see, I've finished tracing and I'll just remove this reference image now. And hopefully you can see quite clearly where I've drawn the lines. And I've put in a few directional strokes, little lines and markers to show me which direction some of the hairs are going. But what I will do is, you can see this is quite dark, and obviously I've done that for the purposes of the video so that you can see clearly on screen. However, when I come to do the painting itself, what I will do is I will lighten these lines. I've just noticed that I've lost a little line up here, which is the edge of that leaf, so I'm just going to draw that in. So yeah, check that everything is in place, and then I'll take a putty rubber and I'll just lighten the lines before I start my painting, because there's nothing worse than creating a beautiful painting but the viewer being able to see quite clearly your pencil lines. It can spoil the image. A few tips for you. One, make sure you secure the image on top of your paper so that if you have to nip away and come back, you know, if things get moved about, you don't want to start a tracing and then have to try and line it up again. It's really difficult to do that. So by simply using the masking tape, that will stop that from happening. And using a nice soft pencil or a graphite stick, you can get really great coverage very quickly. And tip number 3 would be to lighten your pencil lines afterwards with a putty rubber, and that way you'll have enough of a line and a guide to do your painting, but hopefully it won't show through your finished piece. Once again, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. If you've gone through this series with me from episode 1 right through to today, episode 6, you're now ready to paint your first watercolour painting. So in next week's episode, I'm going to take you through a whole painting step by step, from transferring the reference image all the way through to a finished painting. Now, we've just officially started spring, so I thought it would be really nice to have a spring theme. So next week I'll be teaching you how to paint a pretty yellow daffodil. So join me then. Take care, folks. See you soon.